because set stocking or just putting cattle out without rotating doesn't get that cycle of regrowth happening in the root system. We are a cow-calf operation through to finish, so we finish all our cattle either grain or grass finished. We do both types of finishing, and we direct market all of our cattle as well. We have our own brand. It's called Pure Island Beef, and so we with the current cattle prices, maybe not everything will go through our brand, but we historically, well, at least since about I think about 2014 to 2015 in there, almost all of our cattle have gone through our brand. So we use local abattoirs and either send them out as carcasses from the abattoir to butcher shops or have them fully processed into cuts. And then we have a couple of country markets that sell our beef. Not very much gets sold on Manitoulin, given the size of the community we're in here. So our biggest markets are Sudbury and Toronto. Our core herd is purebred shorthorn and Angus cattle, and then we have a herd of crossbreds of those two breeds. And then we also, when the gentleman that sold this farm sold to Henning, we bought his herd, and it's a Charolais-based herd. It's up on the hill there right now, but we've been breeding them shorthorn, and there's a few black cows up there as well. But the breeding program is to get a British bull on them. The goal is to have all of those, obviously 50% British, but the rest of our herd is 100% British. Given that we have 3 households involved, the cow herd is significant. It's about, I think about right now, about 320 cows, calves and yearlings. And then we also do some custom grazing. And the custom grazing herd is part of what we'll be talking about today. There's a group of 112 steers on this side of the road right now. And then in Silverwater on the farm, we have another 300-ish steers that we're custom grazing. The herds get wintered out fully in the winter. Only the wean calves and the finishing cattle are in barns or yards. So we winter the cows either in hay fields, pastures, or cropland where we want the manure and where there's shelter nearby and easy access to water that's open for the winter as well. We also have 3 different calving seasons. So we have one group that calves in March. It's our smallest group. And then our biggest group on a couple of properties calve in May. And then we have another fall calving group. So again, to spread out the cattle available for marketing at any one time of the year. Our primary crop is forage. We do grow, grain, wheat, barley, and we also grow corn for grain and for silage, corn silage, and we do a bit of canola as well as a cash crop. The other thing we do, and you can see it in the distance here, that was winter wheat, and all of our wheat is underseeded to red clover, so as a cover crop and also for grazing in the fall. So at some point when that grows up a little bit more, either the cows or these steers, whoever needs the pasture, will be rotating through that as well. With regards to the pasturing, we do rotational grazing on essentially everything. It varies a little bit property to property as to how intensive the rotation is, but we rotationally graze. And we do it because rotational grazing builds a resilient pasture system, and Manitoulin is the driest region in the province. Prince Edward County, I think, is second. It's ironic because we're completely surrounded by water, but we have the lowest rainfall data of any county or district in the province. So we need to work constantly on keeping our pastures in a state that they can recover anytime that there is a rain. When we do get rain, there's a piece on the far end towards town, and then it's split straight across the top into a 180 acre chunk and a 300 acre chunk. So it gets a little bit of rest, maybe not quite what it should, but it's already made an improvement over grazing it as one unit, because the cows hardly ever really utilize the very back, because the best pond is at the front and the salt and mineral historically was always at the front. So we're trying to rotate by moving the salt and mineral, getting them to the other side of the dividing fence, which we put across, and then making use of the water that is at the back so that they don't always want to come to the front. I wanted to get into a little bit for those that are looking for some more technical information about the rotation and why it's important. The founding principle of rotational grazing is the rest period, and that's so that obviously the top growth can regrow for the cattle to graze, but also that the roots recover. Because if you constantly remove top growth, you also are limiting root growth, and the roots will mirror the top. So a pasture that is continuously grazed to just an inch or two of height, that's all the root mass that will be below it, regardless of the depth of soil. And then even if you do get rain, it can't really recover because there's no root system to take advantage of it. So roughly, you don't want to be constantly removing a huge percentage, because every time you remove a lot of growth, the roots stop growing. But it's also the reason why Farmers for Climate Solutions and CFGA are interested in rotational grazing, is because as you take off the top growth and do slow down the root growth, when you let it rest again and the root growth restarts, you get all the sugars, etc., moving through the plant to the root systems, feeding microbes, and then over time through the processes in the soil, those microbes and plant materials from the roots that slough off will become part of a more complex system and become soil stable carbon. And that's what we want for carbon sequestration, and that's why the funding programs are in place to encourage rotational grazing, because set stocking or just putting cattle out without rotating doesn't get that cycle of regrowth happening in the root system. And so we have to have rotational grazing to get that regrowth of the roots that encourages the stable carbon in the soil. And the key also is not to disturb that soil carbon with tillage. So if it isn't a rotation, keeping the tillage to a minimum till system, or we've recently acquired a no-till drill as well. So to keep the carbon in the soil, we have to reduce tillage, and also to keep carbon in the soil, we can't let it be the pastures be overgrazed. By rotationally grazing, you are constantly getting the livestock back into vegetative growth. And the key is to manage the rotation so that in the spring, things don't get ahead of you. It is really tough to do. You have to either have a herd big enough to stay on top of it, or you have to have a fallback of perhaps mechanically harvesting some fields so that things don't get too mature, because the digestibility and the protein levels obviously decline as maturity advances, and the cattle just won't graze it. Like they'll trample it or just leave it standing if it's too mature. So if you can rotationally graze and keep it vegetative, the quality of the feed is far, far better. You're getting into 80 to 90% digestibility in leafy material versus only 50 to 60% digestibility in mature growth, and protein levels, if it's mature, maybe of only 8 to 10% versus high teens, low 20s in lush growth. So it's a vast difference in nutritional quality as well.